Looking back, I can see that there is a kind of common thread, and it started with my first teacher. My parents were I was living in we were living in Indianapolis in the Midwest, and they were looking for a piano teacher for me because I was showing some interest playing the piano first on tabletops, pretending to play, and then getting a toy piano, and then finally an old upright piano from an ad in the newspaper, and they thought I should have piano lessons. So they inquired around and found out who was the respected teacher in town, and it was this older woman who didn't take me because she said I was too young. I was 5. And she recommended a young teacher in town who was just starting to build her studio. And so this young woman, who was, I guess, looking back, must have been around 26 or 27, took me on. And I studied with her for my first 8 years, and she was wonderful. She did so many things besides teach piano. She taught music. She thought it was important to know harmony. We did cadence patterns from the very beginning. We did scales and arpeggios, of course, but she started me on little composition exercises and theory papers, the Fletcher theory papers, I remember, and thought composition was important. She introduced me to improvisation when I was a little bit older. As a matter of fact, she did some accompanying for modern dancers one summer at Jacob's Pillow in Massachusetts, and came back all excited about improvisation as a way to release and free the musical spirit and put you in touch with musical gesture as a reflection and also as a stimulus of physical gesture. And she gave me a few improvisation lessons and got me a job at around age 12. I was accompanying modern dance classes. And that turned out to be one of the most important influences in my life. Working with dancers, thinking about music as gesture, and becoming aware of which harmonies were harmonies of tension and which were harmonies of resolution, how to evoke kind of large, expansive motions in the dancers, and how to reflect in music or prompt through the music kind of contractions and tense motions, and much more. Phrase structure, because dancers always do things across the floor in 4s and 8s. So that was very pivotal, and it was somehow, looking back, I really felt that I was learning music, not just piano, and that's the path that I followed. Actually, my next teacher was a teacher at the local college, and he was simply more sophisticated for advanced students, and we did different repertoire. But that first teacher was a major influence on my life, and that's why I have such great respect for the teachers of the young, because I always say, as a conservatory level teacher, I have the easy job. Um, I have people who've already developed a good foundation. They already have a love of music. They know that music is what they want to do. And they come to me for my ideas about the music, interpretation mostly, and solving some technical problems also. But it's the teachers who teach the young who, whose job it is to develop a lifelong love of music and give them a start toward that path of loving music and having musical values that I have the greatest respect for. And now I'm teaching again, as I did when I first started teaching. I'm teaching some young ones. I have a 9-year-old student, a couple of high school students, and I'm loving teaching that age group, and I'm, as you know, becoming very involved in the New England Conservatory Preparatory Division, and also through Musicale exposed to pre-college age, which I think is so terribly important. And then my musical path continued not at a conservatory, but at a college. I went to Brandeis, just on the outskirts of Boston, and I see that now as also part of that continuum, that music is not just about playing the piano and developing skill, but it's about broader knowledge, not only of music, but of fields outside of music. So I studied, like most college students, psychology and philosophy and history and science. And my parents thought, and I came to believe also, that it was important to get a well-rounded education. And I went to graduate school, not at a conservatory, but at a university, and I studied theory and analysis and composition. And I think that's had a very strong influence on my musical thinking. Um, because when I approach music, I try to see how it works, how the composer might have thought of it, how he or she developed the musical ideas, how one thing leads to another, or how things within the composition are related. So that's become kind of a main thread for me in my musical work and in my teaching. How does the music work? What is it about? What are the interrelationships that we as performers should be aware of so that it makes sense to the listener?